This is Brayton Rose and Abigail Jarman with Linton-Stockton Student Press, and we're here today with Judge Allen.
Good to meet you. Welcome to the Circuit Court. Glad to have you here.
So who or what inspired you to go into law?
Well, that's a question I've given a lot of thought to over the years, and I've still not come up with a really good answer to that. But a lot of my family members have been law enforcement officers, and I grew up locally in this community, so I had a hand, I guess you'd say, with the law, having grown up with a number of family members, like I said, in law enforcement. And after I graduated high school, went to Indiana University at Bloomington, and graduating from the business school there, and real life was about to hit me in the face, and I had to decide what I wanted to do. And I always had a little bit of an interest in the law just from being around police officers, and there's a lot more to the law than just criminal law, but I think that sparked my interest to it, and decided to apply to law school and was accepted and finished up there. So it was not a grand story as to what led me to it, but I think that's how I got there.
When you were our age, what did you picture yourself doing?
When I was your age, I thought that I would go to the IU School of Business and be a stockbroker, probably on Wall Street in New York City. And then as I got older and started looking at life's priorities, I thought that I wanted to be back in my home community and do something that I can make a difference here and make a decent living. And so life's priorities changed what I thought I wanted to do back when I was a younger person, but everything's worked out real well.
When you were younger, how did you view lawyers, judges, and the legal system?
Well, I always admired, I knew some of the local attorneys growing up here in Bloomfield where I grew up, and a number of the attorneys had offices around the courthouse square, so I would see them in the community or at church. Fortunately, I didn't have any formal involvement with the court systems when I was young, fortunately, but always admired them as being very professional people and community leaders. I knew the judges and knew who they were, and really admired the professionalism and integrity that they displayed and leadership in the community. So I always, really admired those folks.
How did your father being the sheriff influence you?
Well, as I was growing up, prior to him being a sheriff, he was an Indiana State police officer for a number of years. So that was always interesting. I knew a lot of the folks, a lot of the older kids a lot of times because everybody knows who the police officers are in town. And it was never an issue for me. It was always a good experience. I was very proud of what my dad did. And he became sheriff when I was just about to graduate from law school, and the first year actually that I was judge, that he was still in office there. So for a short period of time, a few months, he was sheriff and I was judge, and that was kind of a neat experience as well. So that was, it's always been a positive thing and something I've been very proud of.
With all of your degrees that you have earned, why do you choose to stay in the Greene County Circuit Court?
Well, when I decided to become an attorney, in fact, it's in my law school application in that packet, that what I wanted to do in my career was ultimately become a judge in Greene County. So I had a private practice here in Greene County. I started out in the law firm of Rao and Hawkins. It was in Jasonville at the time, and then became Rao and Allen. We built an office over by the hospital in Linton. That's now the Rao law firm there. And had an opportunity then to work in Clay County in the prosecutor's office, and then was appointed here to the court. And this has just kind of been the career goal that I've had, and I enjoy my job. I'm very thankful to have it, and try to show up every day and do my best. And I wouldn't want any other job.
When you were elected, what were some worries you had?
I was initially appointed back in July of 2006 to fill a vacancy. My predecessor had retired, so they filled the position. Then I had a contested election back in November of 2006. I was a fairly young lawyer at that time, so I had a lot of excitement. I had confidence in myself, but certainly there were reservations about taking a big step into a judicial position as a young lawyer, and trying to gain the respect and support of the local attorneys. And I think just by, like I said, showing up each day to work and working hard and proving yourself, you do that in anything that you do, and this was no exception. And I hope to think that, or like to think that I accomplished that. And so one of my biggest concerns was just transitioning to this position as a fairly young lawyer, and like I said, just worked hard and did my best. So.
Have you ever had to rule on the side of the law, but you personally felt different?
Well, that's an interesting question. There's a saying in the law a lot of times that bad facts or hard facts make bad law. What that means is that factual circumstances sometimes that make you feel like you should rule one way might lead to bad policy in another, or a bad application of the law. So there are times in certain circumstances that you feel like the facts might be one way, but you understand the operation of the law should be a different outcome. And we're certainly bound to follow the law, but we have a fair amount of discretion in circumstances when the facts are what they are to apply the law to them and come up with a reasonable and just outcome. The law usually does the right thing and comes out with a good outcome. So.
As a judge, how do you deal with sensitive material?
Well, one of the things that I deal with, and we split our cases by local rules as to which court does what type of cases. I do all the juvenile cases, which are confidential, so we certainly be mindful of not disclosing any of that information. Very clear with all of my staff as well that I have to be, in the strictest of confidence with that information. So a lot of our information is public record and needs to be transparent, and we do the best job we can to make that. People are free to come in and observe most court proceedings, but when there's confidential information, we absolutely keep it confidential.
How do you deal with being a judge in a rural area where you may have a case that involves someone you know?
That happens a lot. As you know, growing up in a rural community, you know a lot of folks. I see a lot of people that I went to school with or I know from the community for various reasons. You go to a place like Walmart or other public place and you see a lot of people that you've had in court. And sometimes things went their way and sometimes it didn't, and that can be a little bit of an awkward situation sometimes. But if you have a true conflict, you get a special judge to deal with the case. And sometimes you have those cases where it's not quite a conflict, but the person that's a little bit uncomfortable, and you just do the right thing. You hear the case and you make the best decision you can and do what you think is right and stand by that. So,
how does your job allow you to be part of the community?
It gives you an opportunity to be involved in some of the most important news events that you see in the community. Have a front row seat to not only the things that make the newspaper, if you will, or other outlets of news today, but it also gives you an opportunity, like any other job or profession, to be involved with civic organizations or be involved with, if you have children, in their activities. It just gives you an opportunity to and flexibility to be involved in very a wide array of community events. Or like I said, you have to be careful about the conflict issue and the rules of professional conduct to not overstep bounds in that regard, but it does give you a platform to do good things and have a strong voice. So you have to use that wisely and judiciously, for sure. So.
How would you like to be remembered in the local community?
Well, I guess my first response is that I'm not really concerned about being remembered, but I suppose if somebody does happen to remember me, I hope they think that I was a fair, honest individual in my professional capacity. But it's more important to me to be recognized as a good person, a good father, and a good family man, and that's what's most important to me. So.
What are some moments in your career that have stuck out to you the most?
Well, accomplishing, throughout, starting in school, whether graduating high school, then getting an undergraduate degree in college, or completing law school and then passing the bar exam. They're all significant milestones that I'm proud of and took hard work to accomplish. But once in my professional career, I'm proud to have had a successful private practice and had the opportunities that I've had becoming a judge in Greene County. It's an important position. It certainly doesn't make me important as an individual, and I don't take it that way, but I do give respect to the position, and I'm very proud of having the opportunity to serve as a judge in Greene County, and it's been certainly the highlight of my professional career to serve in this position.
What advice would you give to someone that is going for the same position that you were?
Well, first, it does take hard work and sacrifice. If you're an attorney, it's a good profession. It's a good education in law. To get a law degree, it gives you a lot of opportunities. To become a judge, just a situation where you have to be open with your mind as far as hearing all sides of it. It is a really interesting experience to try to resolve a dispute when you don't know the folks involved or know the circumstances behind it, and you have to make a decision based simply what you hear in court. But it's like everything else, whether you're a student or a sibling or a parent, whatever the case may be, same as when you go to work one of these days in the field that you choose, that if you work hard, you make good decisions, and you do what's right, you'll turn out just fine.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give given to your younger self?
Well, that's an interesting question. You may have stumped me just a little bit on that. No, there are things, you always look back that you could have done a little different, maybe studied a little more or done things a little differently. But like I said, getting in this position that I'm in has been the goal of my career, and there's no other job that I'd want to do. So as far as changing how things have worked out, I can't think of anything that I'd really do differently, but I had great influence from my parents and from my grandparents, my family members. I'll give Kelly a shout out here as being a babysitter, Mrs. Lannon, as most of you may know. Just good influences with all of my family members that you work hard, you be honest, you do what's right, and good things will happen. And I had a great time growing up in Greene County. I don't think I'd change a thing about that, and had the opportunity to fulfill my professional goal. And like I said, I hope to keep this job till I retire, and I wouldn't change anything about that.
We heard that you were given the nickname Chip. Where did this come from?
Well, my full name is Eric Chipman Allen. The Chipman comes from my maternal grandmother's side of the family, and I was called Chip from before I can remember, so you'd have to ask my parents, I guess, but I think it was just a derivative of my middle name, and that came about, and it stayed with me. So.
This was Abigail Dryman and Brayton Rose with Linton-Stockton Student Press. Thank you, Eric, Judge Allen, for speaking with us.
It's been my pleasure.